there is a lag too. So, all right, everybody ready to go? Do you mind if we start a couple minutes early?
We're good.
And then I will be lunching and learning. I have half a sandwich here.
I know, I have my lunch too, so it's very selfish.
Oh, good for you. Okay. All right, Michael, give us the heads up.
Are we good?
Are we good? Are we live?
I believe we are.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Sorry. We were waiting for you to, do some Hollywood thing. Hi, everyone. This is Karen Richardson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Society for Technology and Education. We're a day and a half into VISTE virtual VISTE. We're calling it both, I decided. And so I may be a little punchy today, but we're having a wonderful time online, connecting in a variety of different ways, including live sessions like the one you're watching right now. We are also doing lots of things extracurricular, just like if you attended our conference. So we do have an exhibit hall. When you go to our schedule at sketch.com, if you click on the sponsors link, our sponsors are listed. Some of them are available for live meetings, so feel free to click on the link to request a meeting with them. And I'll point out for folks who like that, one way to win prizes is to meet with our sponsors. They'll put your name in the hat after they've met with you, and then we'll pull a couple of those names for prizes. In addition, we are holding an online auction. VISTE operates out of a dairy farm, an old dairy farm in Sussex County, Virginia. And so I went down to the VISTE dairy barn this morning and pulled out some vintage VISTE items. I have things from back into the 80s when we even had a different name. They'll be included in gift baskets as part of the auction. And then we also have some sponsors who have provided gifts. So head out to, again, the website and look for the auction link. And then finally, there are a couple other ways to earn prizes. We give away great prizes at the VISTE conference, and virtual is no exception. Hashtag. The hashtag is VISTE virtual. That's the official hashtag, VISTE virtual. And we are tracking it using some kind of magic that I don't know about to let us know who's been doing it the most. We'll pull that data, and whoever does it the most will get a prize, and then who knows, maybe we'll give a couple of runner-up prizes as well. And then finally, even if you're not presenting live, we have a playground open at the conference website where you are welcome to include your resources. Maybe you created a great tutorial video about using Flipgrid in your high school English class, or maybe you created a great lesson plan around how you introduced computational thinking into your third grade math classroom. We'd love to have those things included in the playground. So please go ahead and make your contribution. Just click add to the collection, fill in a couple of questions for us, and then again, we'll go through some of those resources. We'll do some random drawings, and we'll be giving prizes away probably as early as late this afternoon, but probably tomorrow. We'll give you till tonight when the conference is officially over. So win prizes, but those prizes are all there as an incentive to get you more involved in the extracurricular pieces of the conference. We love the live sessions we're doing. We're learning so much, and I believe today will be no exception for our Lunch and Learn, but we really want to also get you involved in that community building piece. So run out to the website after this is over, check some of those links, and go ahead and get involved. So with no transition necessary or required, I don't know how that works, I am so excited to welcome this group back again today. As we were planning the virtual conference and thinking about the kinds of sessions that would be useful, we knew, first of all, we needed to focus really on online learning, whether it's blended or hybrid or whatever word you want to use. Some of it's going to be online, but we know that's the challenge that our teachers are facing. And so we connected with Code RBA. We'll let them tell you a little bit more about what Code RBA is. But they've been doing online and blended learning for a while. And so they've got some lessons that they learned. We heard from them yesterday about generally how they organize things, as well as the process they took You're not going to get this grade out day one. I'm here to tell you, people. It's a learning process, but the more you plan and the more you're with your team, they'll explain all that to you. If you didn't catch it this morning, we had a great group of their students available to us, and we were so excited to talk to them. That video is already available. But this afternoon, or today for our Lunch and Learn, they're going to be talking to us about that SEL, social emotional learning. That's going to be our big challenge this year, I think, is how we really connect in an online setting in a human kind of way. So I'm going to turn it over to Kumi, who is the Executive Director of Code RBA, and she is here with a terrific team of educators, and they're going to talk to us more about this. So Kumi, please take it away. I'm going to mute my mic and my camera. Mike's going to do the same, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks so much, Karen. Thanks for having us back today, and thanks to everyone who's joining us. I know we have some repeat lunchers from yesterday, and we appreciate that. We know you could eat lunch with strangers anytime, but we're glad that you chose us for today. And so we're gonna just get started with some quick introductions so you know who our team, who's on our team right now. And so again, I'm Kumi Goranson. I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of CodeRVA Regional High School. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Ashworth next.
Hi, I'm Gwen Ashworth, and I work with our school counseling team, our student services department.
And I'm Rebecca Hall. I'm one of the math teachers at CodeRVA.
Hi everyone, I'm Erin Hill and I teach humanities at CodeRVA.
Hello, my name is Salman Pervez and I teach physics and chemistry at CodeRVA, and I am part of the 9th grade academy and PBIS team.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. And, sorry. All right. So hopefully you can see see our community building in a virtual environment slides. So I'm just going to take us through a few quick slides to let you know about CodeRVA. If you were not familiar with our school, or you weren't with us yesterday, just so you know a little bit about us, we are a public magnet school that focuses on computer science education for our students. There are thousands of computer science vacancies in Virginia and across the nation. And so we're going to graduate students who are ready to fulfill those vacancies. We just had our first class graduate this year. We are a regional school, which means that we are supported by different school division partners. We have 14 partners outside of the Richmond area. And we just had our 3rd birthday. We were founded in 2017, so we're a very young school. We have a very diverse student body. I know some of you watching may be thinking, well, you're a magnet program and you're a small school, so how does what you do apply to us? We're happy to try to talk through that today. We feel like our student body is reflective of the demographics of the Richmond region. You see those numbers up on the screen. Our students are selected through a weighted lottery process, which means that the names are selected through the lottery to try to reflect the demographics that we have in Richmond. However, there are no barriers to enrollment in our school. So students don't do an interview, they don't have to do an essay, there's no GPA minimum. We take all students who are interested in computer science, have a passion for it, or just want to know more about how they can have a career in computer science. We are a regular high school in many ways, meaning we offer standard advanced diplomas. We also offer dual enrollment courses and even an associate's degree in computer science for our students who are interested. 100% of our students take at least one AP class. That's a new program that we have, but we are challenging them to take that rigorous coursework. And then our signature program is an internship process. We do 6-week immersive internship in 11th and 12th grade to help our students build workplace readiness skills and build their computer science skills. So for 6 weeks in both 11th and 12th, our students do not do other coursework. They may do some online courses they have to keep up with, but they don't take courses with us. They actually just completely go into that work-based environment and participate in internship projects. And so that's one of the unique programs of our school. As we mentioned, we have been using blended learning consistently since the school was founded. For those of you new to blended learning, maybe not by this point in the conference, but blended learning is when you provide high quality face-to-face instruction and with great online content. Kind of the last unique feature about our school is that we actually requested and received a variance from the Department of Education in the spring to continue functioning online. So we were the only fully functional public school in Virginia for the spring that we're aware of. We continue to teach new material, our students were learning, our teachers were assessing. And so we had a very different spring than many school divisions. And we want to share today with you about some of our experiences and our plans. You know, as we said, it's not perfect the first time you do it. You know, we left on a Friday and started on a Monday with teaching, but we still had some growth areas as well. And so we're looking forward to improving our model for the upcoming school year. And as mentioned, if you didn't see our student panel this morning, we couldn't have asked for a better segue into today's session. And our students focused on the concept of building relationships and connecting with teachers. It was really exciting for us to hear them talk. And so that's what we're going to share with you today, is about the idea of community building. And so I'm going to stop sharing so that Ms. Hall can pick it up from there.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about just kind of how our school is structured and how we transition to online in March, so you can kind of get some background information as we frame kind of what we did for social emotional learning. So as Kimmy said, we are blended learning school, and we've been a blended learning school since we opened. So that didn't change when we went virtual. So we use Canvas for our LMS. So all of our blended courses, so that's science, computer science, math, and humanities, which is an integrated English and history course. All of those courses, we as teachers create the Canvas course for that. So that includes activities, instructional resources, assessments, all those good things that you can put into an LMS are there for our students. And then we support their learning through face-to-face small group instruction. So you can see, like in the picture there's students in a classroom. Our classrooms are small intentionally, so that way we have some small group work for them to do. And then they also spend part of their time in the open space. So you can see the picture of our open space, where that self-directed time where students are working on their online courses, maybe with a partner, maybe independently. It's kind of an extension of the classroom. So if a teacher has 20 students for their first period or first rotation, they won't be able to fit 20 students into their classroom. So we as teachers decide who is going to come into a breakout session in our classroom and who is going to be working on the floor, completing their online coursework. So we get that flexible grouping throughout. So here's just a sample of a calendar. So we use Google Calendar to schedule students for their breakout sessions, which are class sessions, right? So you can see here, like the student had Algebra 2, A2. One day she had a breakout in a classroom, and then the next day she had independent practice, which would be on the floor. So you can kind of get an idea of how we structured our day pre-school closure. Students also have a PLT rotation, which is a personalized learning time where they can work on their online electives, get support from a teacher, meet with their school counselor, do those other things that maybe get intervention services. So you can kind of get an idea of each student every day would check their calendar, know what they have to do, what whether they were on the floor or in a classroom, and what scheduled events they had each day. So as we transition from that model and kind of that world to virtual in March, our original intent was, well, we'll just keep the same schedule, and so that way students just do the same thing they were doing. And after we tried that for that first week, it was a little overwhelming for teachers, for students, for parents to figure out where and when students were supposed to be online in virtual learning sessions. So instead of being face-to-face in a breakout, now they were through the computer having those same breakout experiences. So we went to each department had their own day model. So you can see here on Monday, all students knew they had a computer science breakout. And then they also knew that we had office hours in the science department and math department. So they could get individual help from teachers. And then we had the same schedule run from late March till the end of May. So students knew what to expect each day and what their life was going to look like during that virtual time. On Fridays, we kept the personalized learning time and time for the academic case managers to meet with students, for special education, individual check-ins and all of that. So there was other things happening throughout the week, but this was kind of our structure, and it made it easier to communicate to families, like this is how each day, each week is going to run as we transition to all virtual learning. And then just a few other points about the transition to all virtual. We, of course, had students, we are one-to-one environment. They were comfortable with Canvas before we transitioned, so that was a bonus. And then they were comfortable with checking their Google Calendar to see when they had a breakout session. They already knew that. That was a practice we had before. We did practice with them Google Meet sessions, so we knew something was going to happen. We didn't know when or what, but we knew eventually schools were going to close. So we did some practice sessions with them in the building on logging into Google Meet and camera, microphone, making sure all of that was functioning so they would know when they went home what was going to happen. And then our students have email accounts. So that was also a beneficial way for us to communicate with them immediately. So we closed Friday, Monday, we could email them and check in with them and kind of get them going. Here's what we're planning to do for the week. We maintain attendance records like we would if we were in school. So every time as a teacher, I had a breakout session, I would take attendance and submit that. So school counselors could monitor attendance of students and see who was attending each day, who maybe missed one breakout a week or who was missing multiple, so they could provide support for students as needed. And then we do have a morning meeting structure. So during the regular school year before the closure, we would have a morning meeting each day where students would meet with their morning meeting teacher. We would go over announcements, talk about their day, any updates, any information was shared during that time in attendance. So when we went to all virtual, we stopped the morning physical meeting, but we kept the structure with the slideshows. So students still had all the information they could refer to for the week, announcements, upcoming events, club meetings. We still had some clubs meeting in the virtual environment. So students knew what was going on. So they felt that connection to the building. And then as teachers, when we transitioned to all virtual, we did have to make some curriculum modifications. So of course, we reviewed all of our standards. We went through and kind of identified what were key standards essential that had to be covered for students to be successful in the next course. And we modified our pacing a little bit. We found that the pace we were using in a traditional, like when we were in school setting, wasn't going to work, didn't move easily to virtual because it took some time for students to adjust and for us to adjust. So we made some modifications to our pacing as well. And then a big one was the due date. So prior to school closing, we might have been tighter on due dates, but then once we kind of went into this model, we started to modify due dates and kind of went to a school-wide, okay, all of the assignments are due on this day, to help students and parents kind of frame their brain around what was coming and what things were happening when. So that was really helpful for students and families as we transition. So some of those things will be in place in the fall if we are all virtual, and some of these things we're going to continue to revise and get better at as we provide the best instruction we can to students. So I'm going to let Dr. Ashworth take over, and she's going to focus a little bit more on the SEL aspects and some of the ways we supported students and built relationships in this new virtual environment.
All right. And so before we go any further with talking about SEL, I thought this would be a natural time for us to really pause and clarify what exactly we're talking about, because SEL is certainly a common and popular buzzword right now, but it's important for purposes of this presentation that we're all clear in understanding what specifically SEL means to us. And so just a simple definition is that social and emotional learning is a process where which our students can acquire and apply knowledge, attitudes, and skills that they need to understand and manage their emotions, to set and achieve their goals, to feel and show empathy to others and to themselves, to establish and maintain relationships, and to make responsible decisions. So when we're talking about SEL, and we're using that common language, please refer back to those ideas when you're really trying to understand SEL and what it can look like in your building. So before we talk about the specific ways that we've really tried to share out those skills and build those capacities in our students, we really, when we step back, when we look at it big picture, we're building in the space and the time for students to create and deepen their relationships with one another and with staff, for the adults to connect with their students and with one another and to build their capacity to support their students. We're creating and maintaining, improving safety in a supportive and equitable learning environment that's promoting all of our students and their social and emotional development. And we're using data to inform us and create opportunities to share power, to deepen our relationships, and to continuously improve the ways that we support not just our students, but our other stakeholders, our families, our staff, our community members, and so forth. Now, some actionable behaviors that we've implemented at Code RBA to support SEL include our school counseling team. So right now, that looks like virtual check-ins. We use academic data, attendance data, and personal surveying to account for the ways that we plan and schedule our virtual check-ins. So we survey students periodically to check in on a personal level and just say, hey, you know, these are some risk factors for various things. And if you're feeling any of these things, or you just like to do a check-in, please let us know through the survey or through reaching out. That can often result in individual counseling sessions and or student planning. So if a student has a question about a college application or a future career, this is a great way to connect with them and to provide those services. Additionally, parent outreach is another way that we've been able to support our students and their families and their SEL capacities. And so I've been pleasantly surprised a few times when I've scheduled a virtual check-in with a student and have actually had a parent choose to also attend. And so that's helped us to recognize that that's yet another way that we can connect during this interesting and unique time. Our mindsets and behaviors are things that school counselors are always focused on. And so these include standards related to psychosocial attitudes or beliefs that students have about themselves related to their academic work. And they ultimately make up a student's belief system as exhibited in these behaviors, when they exhibit these behaviors, as well as their learning strategies, their self-management skills, and their social skills. And lastly, multi-tiered systems of support and interventions. And so we are at the staff level monitoring student progress and checking in at various data points to then connect those to individualized student goals. One little helpful piece that we've recognized through trial and error and through being more virtually based these last few months is that for a lot of our students, they really do better and prefer afternoon check-ins. And so while as adults, it might be easier for us, or we might naturally think, oh, let's start the day with a check-in to help the student reframe and get ready for their day. My attendance rates for my virtual check-ins later in the day are a lot more populated than earlier in the day. And I would imagine many of our teachers have experienced something similar with their breakout sessions. In terms of community building, so adding on this idea of social and emotional learning and how it extends to our community and school culture, our morning meetings, which I know Ms. Hall mentioned previously, is a great way to really structure what we're trying to build, to push out any sort of announcements, but also really to build that school culture and that student identification with school. We share resources during this time, and we're trying to focus on community and relationship building. And so one way that I know for the upcoming school year, we're planning to do so virtually is that of sharing. So creating a specific sharing time during our morning meeting where students are asked to engage with one another, reflect on their own or a partner's personal interests, preferences, skills, or some sort of interesting variable, and just have the space built in and that structure to focus on something besides just the schoolwork and to see one another as, you know, something beyond just students. Office hours are another way that we continue to try to build our students' capacities in these ways. So setting aside time both for teachers, but also for non-instructional staff and for our tech support team to provide a space for people to just come and ask questions, check in, and know that we're available, we're a friendly face, and we're, you know, still present, albeit virtually. The ninth grade academy relationship building sessions. I know in a few moments, Mr. Parvez is going to expand upon that a bit more, but this is a great way for us to connect with our incoming students. And so we're planning to do so here in about a month virtually for all of our incoming ninth graders. And of course, we've built in our natural orientation tidbits and things and onboarding processes. But again, we're also focusing on structuring intentional space and time for these students to just get to be with one another in a virtual setting and just get to check in and see one another as human beings and build those relationships beyond based on classroom content. Lastly, student feedback is super important, and we're constantly trying to get feedback from our students and really reflecting on that as staff so that we can move forward and learn and improve the processes that we're providing. And so these are a few quotes that we received after getting some feedback about our online learning sessions this past spring. Students said that having a time where students can just talk and just share was really nice and important. They wanted us to be more aimed toward getting students to respond. So rather than talking at them, whether at the teaching level or the school counseling level or any other space, focusing on getting the students to respond and to share back rather than to just hear. And then a student was saying that they'd had issues asking for help and that it was much easier in person to just walk up and ask. And so providing more in-depth instructions at the virtual level, that clarifying that communication piece is really important. But those are just some ways that our support staff has been able to continue to grow our SEL capacities in our building. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Parvez, who will share a bit more in depth about our 9th grade academy offerings.
Thank you, Dr. Ashworth. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully you can see my screen right now. And it's my privilege to share information with you about our virtual 9th grade academy, as well as our PBIS program. And our wonderful math teacher, Ms. Cooper, is the team lead for our 9th grade academy. And I'm one of the team members, so I'm honored to share a little bit of information about what we're planning to do. As Ms. Hall and Dr. Ashworth mentioned earlier, that when we were on campus, we always did morning meetings to connect our students to the school and share information about the school. So we're planning on doing that in our virtual 9th grade academy as well. We'll start the day off with a morning meeting, and this time we'll also end the day with a closing meeting. Now, between the morning meeting and closing meeting, we have multiple sessions built in for students. The students will be joining through Google Meet. So the 9th graders will be introduced to Google Meet, which is important because they may need it for the upcoming year while they work with teachers. So the sessions are broken up, as you can see, by topics and time periods, and it's going to have a maximum of 12 students per session that they can choose to go to. It's broken up by Chesterfield is my home district, Henrico is my home district, all the way to a science session, a math madness session, a cool computer science, hanging with humanities. And there's a range of other sessions. I like gaming, photography is cool. I like playing sports. I'm into music. Students can join these sessions and get to know each other and build relationships with the other 9th graders who are joining Code RBA, which is an integral piece that we're trying to convey today regarding building a culture at a school. The other opportunity here also is that students will be introduced to the norms and protocols on how to act when they are inside a Google Meet with the teacher. So they get to learn those pieces as well while they're being onboarded with the 9th grade academy, the virtual 9th grade academy. So hopefully our students will find this useful. We'll also incorporate sessions where we'll introduce our students how to use their Google email, their Google Calendar, how to use Canvas, how to connect their Canvas calendar to their Google Calendar, sync them up so that they can see what's due and when it's due, or if they have meetings with teachers. So we're hoping that our 9th grade academy, our virtual 9th grade academy, is helpful to our incoming 9th graders in building relationships amongst each other, as well as giving them insight into how our school is run. The other piece when it comes to relationship building is PBIS. We are a PBIS school, so when we were on campus, we were really supportive of our PBIS positive referrals to recognize student behaviors. These were daily positive referrals, and we also had monthly PBIS student of the month and collected the data, and we gave students rewards packets. So now when we're going somewhat virtual, we're attempting to keep that going, certain pieces of it. So we're hoping to continue recognizing students through positive referrals while they're in their online Google Meet breakouts. And with the positive referrals, they will still be notified. They'll still get the recognition letter that tells them who the teacher was that recognized them and what they said. We're hoping to connect with parents also on this and try and build in a rewards program, a virtual rewards program. In the past, we've used cryptocurrency that they can redeem for actual physical items like chocolates or school supplies. So we're still trying to fit in our PBI's program into the virtual world, and hopefully we will be successful. But it is an important piece to keep in mind that just because we're not on campus and we move to a somewhat virtual world doesn't mean that we have to give up many things that we did on campus to build a strong culture, and PBIS is one of them. So hopefully schools that are PBIS will continue to do so in a virtual environment as well to help build a strong culture at their school. I am going to hand this over to Ms. Hill, who will share with you information about building relationships with students in breakouts.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Parvez. All right. So in terms of instruction and how you build community as a teacher, I think there's a few important things to consider. And one I would actually like to start with is there's an English teacher named Dave Stewart Jr. He does a weekly email, and in the email yesterday he sent out the importance of building relationships as we, adapt to virtual teaching and what that looks like. And I thought he made a really good point in saying that, even when we're in person and we're learning together in person, that doesn't mean that you have a relationship, right? Just being with someone face to face does not automatically mean you have a relationship. It's something you have to intentionally build and develop and sort of shape and curate the way that you want. And so that obviously still applies online. So I'm going to show you some ways that you can build community and build relationships in your class, but do know that so much of that, what I'm sharing with you, these are really just approaches to doing that. At the end of the day, it's you still sort of making those moments of genuine connections with students and really getting to know them. From our experience in online learning during March through May, we found that students were way more likely to open up, and in most cases, more likely to turn on their cameras, turn on their mics if they were placed into small groups. So I highly encourage you, if you can, to find ways that you can schedule small breakout rooms. That is possible on Zoom. I hear that Google Meet is working on setting up breakout rooms, but even if we don't have that in time for fall learning, you can still very much set up calendar invites for small groups of students to meet and still do group projects and learn as groups. Frequent meetings are important as well. Making sure that you follow up regularly. It was definitely important, and something that we learned from the spring, where we sort of tried to minimize the amount of meetings during the spring. We realized that wasn't enough for kids. So definitely meet as often as you can. Try to find ways to implement icebreakers, games, and I say this not just as a relationship building thing, but even workplaces recognize the value of just doing things for fun, for teams getting together, getting to know one another, and playing games. For instance, my partner works at Capital One, and they regularly have what they call fun events or team events where they just get together and be people, regular people. So when you can, try to schedule that. And if you have a large caseload, because I did notice there were questions in the chat about sort of how large our school is and are we working with as large a population as other folks. If you have a massive load of students, at minimum, you can always still schedule discussion boards and use that on your learning management system. That's something that you can do asynchronously too. So try to find ways to do discussion boards, not just for content, but for fun things. So for instance, this year I found success with asking students, what are they reading? And having them sharing links to what they're reading. There are whole conversations where kids are just talking about what they're reading for fun. And then lastly, I would encourage you to think about ways to build community through self-reflection. So getting students to think about the connections that they're making or not making and how they can improve that. And as you see there, had sort of 2 check-ins this year. And it's easy. You could do it through your discussion boards. You can do it through Google Forms. There are lots of ways and methods for doing that. Speaking of which, tools for engagement. I found lots of success through Flipgrid. And I know that Visti Virtual has a Flipgrid, so make sure you go introduce yourself on there. But it's a great way for students to see each other's video. In most cases, and I know when I personally made my intro video for Visti Virtual, or Virtual Visti, I watched everyone else's videos first. And I wanted to see, okay, you know, what does it look like? And in a way, I connected with you guys, and having not seen you before that moment. So when we ask students to do Flipgrids, encourage them to look at other people's videos, and they will. And I also like with Flipgrid, you can see the hours of engagement there. So it measures sort of how much people are connecting or at least seeing each other through that. Nearpod's a great way to do temperature checks as you're learning something, or just to check in with how people are feeling. Back in the spring, I asked students, what are you doing for fun? Or one warm-up question we had was just, what do you notice? Like if we're at home all the time, we see the same things every day, do you notice anything that's different or that changes, or in what ways can we be mindful and sort of be aware of our surroundings? So Nearpod's great. Flipgrid is great for that. Another tool you could use is Slido, and it's an attachment onto or an add-on to Google Slides. And it's just another avenue for sort of checking in with kids and allowing them to share what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And with all this, those are kind of like higher tech or maybe not as approachable methods. At the end of the day, you can always just talk. So if you're using Zoom or you're using Google Meet, or maybe you're using Teams, just chat. You can always ask students verbally to respond to you with how are you doing type questions. There's usually a chat box on the side that you can ask students to share. So if they're not comfortable with sharing their camera or their voice, they could always chat with you. I just yesterday had a summer class, and the student said, my niece is sleeping, so I'm not talking today. And so she just connected with us through the chat. So low tech works as well. And as you can see there, the chat box can be used for content, but it can also be used just for those checking in with students type questions.
And thanks, Ms. Hill. While you've been talking, we had some suggestions in the chat comments here that maybe we answer some of the questions verbally. So I thought I might loop us back around to that. Thank you for hitting on a little bit of that. We had some questions entered about how big our school is and things like that. And again, we want to acknowledge that every school setup is different. And if you have questions about how could we modify these things for the more traditional comprehensive setting, please feel free to load those comments in. Visti is funneling them into our presentation. But we had some questions in here about our morning meetings. If you're not noticing the responses, we do have morning meetings. Typically when we're in person, we would be doing our morning meetings about 10 to 20 students per teacher, and we would do those in person. If we're moving to the virtual environment, we can do those still via Google Meet is what we use right now. We're exploring Zoom as a possibility, but because we are a G Suite, Google School, we just use Google Meet because it's easier. And we are hoping for that functionality that we were discussing, that it might be a little bit more like Zoom in the future, perhaps. So we have our morning meetings. We are considering doing some grade level meetings this coming year. Having all of our students gather as a grade level is another way to connect. Also always looking for ways for administrators and non-instructional personnel to build connections with students, reviewing things maybe that are coming up as a school, having opportunities for students to ask questions. So we are looking into some grade level meetings for this year. And then a couple of the points were brought up while the teachers were talking from this morning when our students presented, and certainly we encourage you to go watch their YouTube video, but if you don't do that, I will just say that we were really gratified to hear how many of the students focused more on the relationship aspect than anything else when they talked about what advice to give to school divisions who were starting the virtual learning process. Our students specifically talked about some of the surveys that our teachers would use. I know we understand what exit tickets are, but a lot of our teachers used check-in surveys at the beginning of class or at the end of class, and again, they were non-instructional. They might just be sort of, how are you feeling? I know yesterday Ms. Hill gave a great presentation on some different ways that she's done that in her classroom. And today it was great to hear the students say that they just like having somebody ask them, how are things? What's going on with you? And they were just interested in that. And I was really pleased to hear that. And it brought back home why we need to focus on community building in every school, is just to make those connections, especially with our 9th grade group. I know Mr. Parvez talked about our 9th grade academy, and Ms. Cooper, he was mentioning one of our teachers was emailing me after our session, and we were talking about one of the students commented how pleased she was to get mail from our science department. She was participating in a summer session for science, and so the science teachers went through and they mailed home plastic sheet protectors and dry erase markers and copies of some materials that they needed, periodic tables. And she said it was really cool to get this envelope in the mail. And she goes, I have it right here. And she had it on her desk, and she went through the contents and she was able to describe each one of them. And then she said, some kids don't have markers and colored pencils. So they did tell us we could do it online too. And then she described how there was an online option. And so it really just hit home for us that the students do like those little surprises. So we were talking about for our 9th graders, maybe doing handwritten postcards for them, trying to write them notes and mailing them home. And I've seen that used in other schools successfully for attendance concerns. And I thought, what a great idea that is, to just do something personal and to have that student get something they can put up in their room. And just finding ways to connect is what it's about. So I just wanted to share those ideas that came out of this morning's presentation as well. That I thought were really exciting, and it was hearing our students talk about them just made a difference for us. I'm trying to think of anything else, Ms. Hall. I don't know if you remember anything else from the student presentation that we wanted to share specifically, or we could ask for other questions, but we might let you out of class just a little bit early today, possibly.
And I was just going to pop in here real quick. As I said at the top of it, the thing that really impressed me, and I've seen this in other small settings, and I think the first thing I'll say is it is easy to push back on, oh, you're a little high school, your loads are low, those kinds of things. But that's the kind of place where you say, how do we carve out those smaller settings within a large high school? Maybe the world wasn't meant to have 1,500 kids in a building meant for, 500, and maybe we need to start carving out those smaller communities. And I know large high schools are trying to do that kind of thing. So we can create the smaller settings sometimes. So real quick, because I see another question coming in, but I'd like to hear you guys talk a little bit more about that, how you get that responsibility piece going, that kids, and I've heard this from other high schools that do these small kinds of things where the kids said to me, I woke up in 9th grade and I realized learning was my responsibility, not the teacher's responsibility. And how do you get that culture? How did you do that? Or did it just happen? I don't think it did. So how did you do that?
I'm happy to let one of the teachers, feel like I've been talking a lot the past few minutes, if you'd like to chime in, or I can certainly respond.
I think one thing that we do have is students do get on each other, right? There is like this sense of team and we're in this together. And so, hey, like, did you get this done? No, here, this is due tomorrow. Make sure you get this turned into Ms. Hall or whoever. So they're on each other. So that helps us as adults manage that. So I think, you know, there's some sense of ownership, collective, like we want everybody to succeed, not just some kids to succeed. So the kids really pick up on that and then they support each other. So I think that's definitely one thing. And then we also give them some freedom, right? So we talk to them a lot as ninth graders about, I, as your teacher, I'm not going to stand over you and control everything you do for that 90-minute class period or 45-minute class period. There's time where you're working in our open space and you have to be responsible for that. And sometimes when you give the kids the freedom, it's amazing what they'll do with it. And they will rise to the occasion. It's that expectation of we're going to work and we're going to get this done together. And we set those high expectations for kids and they do impress us.
Plus, I suspect they see you all really working together tightly as a team, too. It seems like you're, you know, many years ago when I was born, I guess my parents decided there was never going to be the go ask your mother, go ask your father kind of thing. I think if your leadership team and your vision and your messages are all the same to the students and they're getting that same support in every classroom as well, it's a little harder to push back. So there are a couple more questions in the chat, and I know you guys saw the morning meeting topics, and as well, you know, kind of what are there sanctions in place though for students who don't step up? So I'll mute here and let you address this.
Sure. We're going to try to pull up some specific morning meeting topics that we've used in the past to maybe load in as examples. But, you know, for participation in morning meetings, like, so that's a challenge, right, for anything, because students developmentally, personality wise, are going to have different levels of comfort with participating in things like that. And so we want to honor that for students, but we also want to do things. We talk a lot about building workplace skills, right? So transferring something from, I want you to participate in morning meeting to in the workplace, right? When there's an activity going on, you know, people participate, even if it's not to the same level, right? So you may not have you're not a vocal person, so you may not want to do as much, but you may do something. Just like in the workplace, you have teachers even that are more extroverted or more introverted, and they may not share as often, or they may need more processing time. So kind of try to norm it that this is just what we do. It's not putting you on the spot. It's just a daily thing. One of the techniques that I've seen that works really well too is having the students rotate through leading morning meeting, guiding slides that are common across the school. And so our school counseling department creates those. And so they might have those sentence starters or topics, and then they have announcements and things. So, you know, just randomly drawing names and picking students and their days today, and they stand up and they go through the slides, and making it less like an on the spot and just like, oh, it's just my turn. Everybody had to have a turn, you know, and they may not do it with a joyful attitude all the time, but they do, you know, and participate in some way. And again, you know, we try to focus less on, you know, how much are you participating, right? There's not like a quantity that we're looking for. Like you have to say this many sentences. It's more like, did you try, or did you just say something? Because we do want to make that connection, and that's a two-way street. And then following up, right? If you have that student who really just won't participate, well, there's a why somewhere in there. And so is there an adult in the building that can connect with that student and find out the why, so that we're able to, you know, dig into that. Maybe there's something else going on with the student that we need to ask about.
I would also add that we are successful with morning meetings in a lot of ways because we allow students to own them, not just in presenting them, but the slides that we make with announcements. Students can make those slides for their clubs. Students are acknowledged. Everyone loves seeing themselves, their name or their picture or something on a slide. So sometimes students are featured. I know with Mr. Parvez mentioned PBIS, we've had slides that will acknowledge, you know, here are our students with positive referrals. We want to, you know, yay, congratulate them and have a moment with them. So featuring your students in it and having them create it is huge. We also have a Raptor News crew. And so our student news team, that also the fact that you have your peers sitting there sort of sharing this with you, I think makes it more of a community building thing where the students are interacting with each other through their morning meeting. It's not just, we have some announcements to give you, and the teachers are going to give them to you.
If I can just jump in here for a quick second, most of our teachers at Code RVA are certified in Scrum and Agile methodologies. We all took a training, a 1-week training. So we try and use those ideas in the classroom, whether we're in our morning meetings or whether we are in an academic environment. It is important for us to share that with them because, first of all, these ideas are being used by major private companies. So it gives the students a heads up what to expect when they leave high school. So when students are in a science class and they're working in a lab and they're working as a team, we try and encourage them. We try and teach them what those Scrum ideas and Agile methodologies are. And we try and have them work through those pieces, which helps build ownership. And keep in mind, just like any idea, the first day I try it in the science class, it goes okay. But by the second marking period, it runs a little better. By the third and fourth marking period, you come into the classroom in your physics, chemistry, biology, or any other classroom at Code RBA. By the third and fourth marking period, you'll see the kids running those Scrum and methodologies. They'll just be on their own. They won't need a lot of guidance from their teachers. And so that teamwork builds up, the ownership builds up. And we apply the same thing when we're in the environment with our morning meetings as well. So I would highly recommend, if you have teachers who are interested in learning more about Scrum and Agile methodologies, to try and set up training. It'll build a lot of strength amongst the team and the effectiveness and the efficiency. And you'll notice major companies like Capital One, that's their bread and butter, these Scrum and Agile methodologies. So it gives the students real world examples, real world application, as in what's going to happen when they exit high school.
Thank you, Mr. Parves. And we've loaded in, I don't think someone's transferring them onto the comments, but some morning meeting suggestions. Just a refresher. So we're talking about morning meetings, obviously with high school students. Certainly any questions really work depending on the age of your students. And again, we're not trying to uncover their deepest, darkest secrets with their morning meeting topics, right? So we've loaded in a few, just like you can use questions, what's new with you in your life. You can have sentence starters where they fill in the blanks, right? If I were an animal, I would be blank because blank. Something where they have to fill that in. It's very structured, or you could show them a cute video or an activity, like a question like, did you know that it's important to have a variety of hobbies and interests? Okay, well, why? We could also pull out, because we are a regional school, we have students from different geographic areas, we could focus on things, you have in common, like, oh, did you know that both of these counties do this, or you could say that they're different, did you know that this county is the only county that offers this? So we just anything really to get them talking. For those of you, if you have any experience with restorative practices, proactive circles are another way, if that's something that you wanted to do with your school. Proactive circles are very similar to a morning meeting in that you're asking questions, you're standing up, you're interacting. I'm watching in our comments, we're talking about highlighting themes for weeks and months. So example, it could be like a Hispanic Heritage Month, Computer Science Week. You can choose themed times of the year to highlight for your questions, maybe having students share about those if there's something particularly meaningful to them.
And Ms. Goranson, if I may,
sure,
sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
One of the questions said, what do you do if students don't participate in discussions or morning meetings? And I'm sure every teacher has their special way of interacting with a student and encouraging them. I can only speak for myself personally. So at first, the first few days, I will run the morning meeting, and then I'll start gauging who would like to run the morning meeting for me. And out of a group, there's always one or two who don't need much encouragement, and they want to take that leadership role. And when they do take that leadership role, I can give them some feedback before the session. So I tell them, come see me before the morning meeting starts, or come see me in lunch the day before, so we can run through the morning meeting and get you prepared for it. And then when they do a great job, I have other students are watching them and they're modeling for them. So then I can start encouraging the quieter ones. And the quieter ones are going to need a longer conversation and a very calm conversation, encouraging them and letting them know, if you decide that you want to lead the morning meeting, how about we meet during lunchtime so we can do a dry run? Or how about we meet in the morning before a morning meeting to do a dry run? And that encourages them and gets them more comfortable. And some of them will be nervous and they'll say, I just want to read off the slides. I don't want to ad lib, and that's completely fine. The key is progress, even if it's a little bit, we keep encouraging them and complimenting them. And on the other hand, flip side of that coin, where there are areas of improvement, we give them feedback. And we give it in a way like all teachers do. Not in a harsh way, but in an encouraging manner, where students get to see, oh, this is how you give feedback, and you take feedback, and there's nothing personal about it. It's just ways to improve your leadership skills as you're leading the morning meetings. So I hope I did a little bit to answer that question.
Awesome. Thank you. And I want to be conscious of the time. I know there may be some announcements at the end. So Ms. Richardson, we'll
yes.
say thank you again for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much. And yes, Mike will take care of transferring a few of those things into Agile and Scrum training. I think should be useful for everyone, not just in the workplace, but in your personal lives as well, if you're looking for an organizational system. Thank you to all of you. This has been another great session. Good tips for making those connections with students and ways of managing how this is going to happen. So I'd like to thank all of you. I'll say what I said after this morning. I don't think this is the last time that VISTI and Code RVA will be doing some things together. You've thought through the process, and that's the piece I really appreciate. That so often we go to hear talks and all we hear is the end game. Look at all these wonderful, successful things we did, as opposed to here's how we learned this, and here were the places where maybe we stumbled, or we as adults thought we knew what was going to happen, and we really did have to reach out to those students. And I just saw Fairfax County doing something today, and someone said, how different would this be if we put more power in the hands of the students, or an equal amount of power in the hands of our students? And I think you're really taking us down that path and seeing that if we trust them, they trust us, and we really can. I mean, this morning, those kids were talking about joy and happiness and fun, all connected with going to school, for goodness sakes. I mean, you really made my day, and I think you've made my presenters' days as well. So I'm hoping this isn't the last time I get to see all your smiling faces. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the afternoon and a great start to the school year, no matter how it begins. And we really appreciate you sharing with us. Bye, everyone.